Okay, so I am here with Max Louik, co-chair of Temple Emmanuel's LGBTQ plus task force. And thank you for joining me, Max.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you this evening?
I am doing pretty well. It's a beautiful day. Another day of working from home. you know, they're all sort of running together, but we're making do. It's good.
Yeah, I think it does help as we're heading into summer and just kind of makes it feel different, I think, a little bit. We can get out and do more, perhaps.
Yes.
So we are here to talk about the task force, and well, it's nice to catch up. We have other important things to talk about. So can you tell me a little bit about the task force, how it was created, why it was created, a little bit of history?
Sure. So as you are well aware, as I'm sure most of the people watching are aware, sorry, let me just getting some interference over here. Not sure if they're closing my windows so as not to bother you all with beeps and bloops. Anyway, Temple Emmanuel has been going through a period of transition the last few years. And as part of that process, there's been sort of a reimagining of people's hopes and dreams for what Temple is and what it can be. And as part of that effort, the LGBTQ plus task force was created, I think in August of 2018, with the goal of making Temple more inclusive for all gender identities and sexual orientations, where we can truly say, as we had in the past, and as I think we attempted to, and still attempt to do, but where everyone is welcome. And when we say everyone is welcome, we mean that. So that is the big goal of the task force. Lisa Steinfeld, who is a vice president on the board of trustees, was appointed as the co-chair of that task force initially, and then eventually I stepped into a role of helping her out. But she's our conduit to the main board. And so just a little bit of the makeup of the task force right now. We have a really great team. There is a diversity of opinions and generations of Temple members, but we're always looking for more help too. So if you are interested, if you're watching this and you're interested, please let us know. Hope maybe you'll be more interested by the time this interview is over. I don't know, but we'd love to hear from you. We're always looking to add to our members.
Yeah, great. That's a great plug for the committee too. We want to be welcoming throughout the congregation and on this committee as well, our task force. So please join us. What do you think have been some of the successes of the task force?
So fortunately, we've had a lot of successes, I think, both big and small. And one way in which we in particular were really lucky is that we are far from the first group or organization to put real thought into these issues facing the LGBTQ plus community, and in particular in Jewish communities. There is an incredible organization that was featured in our last Pride Shabbat virtual service known as Keshet. And Keshet is devoted to, I'm going to read their plug here, the full equality of all LGBTQ plus Jews and our families in Jewish life. So a lot of our initial efforts at Temple involve just adopting some of the practices that Keshet recommends. So for example, we were able to put up safe space stickers, both on our website and the building, to let people know this in fact is a safe space for you. We've also donated books that are LGBTQ focused to the Pollen Family Library at Temple. And of course, last year, we had two really big events. The first was our first ever annual, now, Pride Shabbat. And back then we had services at Temple, and we all met in the Beit Tefillah for a beautiful moving service. And it was a real success, and it was really well attended, both from within our Temple community, but also other members of our community, both Jewish and non-Jewish, and it was really great. And finally, one of our major achievements from last year is we were able to bring to Temple, as part of the Rabbi Seidrowitz weekend, actually, Evan Wolfson who is an internationally renowned civil rights attorney. And he's the founder of an organization called Freedom to Marry. And basically this organization, and through Evan's efforts, were able to campaign legally for years for marriage equality, which of course we finally got several years back. So when he came to Temple, he spoke on the topic of making more progress for gay and transgender people in our community, in Pennsylvania, the United States, and the world. So, you know, small topic, but the ask there was, what can we do? And so I actually had the privilege of interviewing Evan for that. And I don't envy you or the other leaders of Temple's team who have been conducting all these interviews, because it's quite difficult to find, you know, probing questions and to get a great, you know, interview going. But I think it was really well received, and it was written up in the Jewish Chronicle, so my mom was happy.
Yeah. It was indeed newsworthy
Yes.
and great. And he also contributed to our Pride Shabbat service last week as well.
He did. We were very delighted to have him back virtually for another, you know, great little couple of minutes of inspiration. And I'm sure he's, you know, happy this week because we had another really big, important LGBTQ legal decision before the Supreme Court, this time with respect to discrimination. The Supreme Court finally, rightly, in my opinion, interpreted the Civil Rights Act to say you can't discriminate someone on the basis of their gender identity or sexual orientation under those civil rights laws. So big victory there too.
Yeah, a great piece of good news this week, for
Yes.
sure, for sure. What do you think are some challenges that the task force has faced, and perhaps the larger community too that we are a part of?
Yeah, I mean, well, let me say this. There was a challenge last year, but I think ultimately became a success story for our task force. And I would say that most of the changes that we have been pushing for have really been welcome, received with open arms by the entire Temple community. But there are some ideas that are, to me, in no way radical. Like, for example, ensuring that trans and non-binary members of our community can feel safe and welcome at Temple by having access to a gender-neutral bathroom. But for whatever reason, that can be harder for some people to get behind. And on top of converting a gendered bathroom at Temple to a non-gendered bathroom, we needed board approval. There was a lot of logistical concerns with that. So it took a little bit while than I had hoped, a little bit while longer to get that together, but ultimately we did. And, you know, Temple, I think, can very proudly say that we have a gender neutral bathroom, so that, again, we can truly say all are welcome.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of really important education came out of that endeavor too. That some of the opinions were of confusion, like not understanding why we needed it, why it was necessary. And I agree that ultimately became a very successful outcome. So thank you for helping to lead that. Why is this work important to you?
Well, I honestly, I'm so delighted that we were able to hear from Rabbi Jay Michelson during the Pride Shabbat virtual service we had last week, because what he said really spoke to me, and it spoke specifically to why this work is important to me. And I would highly encourage everyone watching this interview to go ahead and pull up the Pride Shabbat video on Temple Emmanuel's Facebook page. Watch the whole thing again. It's great. If you want to specifically just revisit or hear for the first time what Rabbi Jay Michelson had to say, I would refer you to Rabbi Aaron Meyer's YouTube page, which has a collection of, I think, all of these now interviews and wonderful, you know, recordings the Temple is doing in the virtual space. But in any event, after that plug, Rabbi Michelson spoke to how he recognizes, and I think many people recognize, that our values as Jews compel us to celebrate diversity and to accept others for who they are, because we are all created in God's image. All of us are. And I agree with him when he said during that service that we see our community grow richer and stronger through diversity and inclusion. And he coined the phrase, I love this, the radical project of empathy, which truly we do need to have a radical approach to empathy, in that if empathy is our prime motivator and mover, and that allows us to feel as much as possible what other people's experiences are like. Again, the only way you come away from that focus, the only conclusion you can have, is to end up being a more welcoming place. So it's really important to me that Temple live up to that ideal, and it is tough and it is hard, and we're not going to get it right. The task force isn't going to get it right all the time, and Temple's not going to get it right all the time. But the important work is to keep trying, and I think in that way you'll let people know that this is a welcoming, inclusive space.
Yeah, I agree. It struck me while you were talking that patience and persistence are the key.
Yes.
That we have to keep working at it. We have to be patient with ourselves when we don't quite get it right, but keep trying, and we will. And that leads me to, what do you think lies ahead? What do you think we'll be looking at next with this task force in our community?
Right, and that is a great question that we on the task force are still figuring out. Obviously, we were gearing up, putting a lot of work into putting the Pride Shabbat together. But it's a very important question. And, it's funny, we just talked about how we're not always going to get it right. One of the things that Jamie Crass talked about during Pride Shabbat, again, we just had an incredible selection of speakers and readings. She said one of the best efforts we can model and practice, which I wanted to do at the top and then neglected it because it's not part of my culture and my thinking yet, is introduce yourself with your pronouns, okay? And introduce yourself with your pronouns when you meet people and when you're introduced for the first time. And I think that's a cultural change that will take some time. But if we are able to do that as a community, it will really help in sending the message to the trans and non-binary members of our community that this is a space where we don't make assumptions about anyone's gender identity before we get to know them or talk to them. And it's just something like, that's a long-term project. I think it's going to take some time, and it's not a program necessarily, but it's our efforts through education that I think we need to focus on there. Now, having said that, we definitely want to do a lot more programming. I think the programming so far has been small but mighty, and it's exciting to think about how we're going to do more. Obviously, now that everyone is sort of in the virtual space, you have to think a little bit differently than you would last year at this time. But looking forward to that challenge. We have a great team. We'd love for you to join us and help. And yeah, I'm excited about figuring out what comes next.
Yeah, a few things. We had talked about before this whole idea of pronouns and how we can actually add it to our names on our Zoom windows.
Right.
And we both have it. We don't know if you can actually see it if you're watching this on Facebook. But I know that when I've been in meetings, right away, it feels good to know how someone wants to be referred to.
Right.
And to see their pronouns where their name is in Zoom helps us with that. And another thing I'll add is that I started putting it on my email signature a little while ago, not just so that someone knows how to address me, but so that someone knows that I'm comfortable knowing who they are and knowing what their pronouns are. So it's just another way to open up, I think, that welcome and helping people to feel welcome. I want to just go back to this Pride Shabbat we just had and congratulate you and the task force on putting together something that I think was really great and really powerful in its message. Do you feel good about that? You're satisfied with the end product that we came up with?
I'm obviously biased, but I honestly think it was incredibly successful and meaningful. And I think it built upon the beauty and sort of novelty in a sense for Temple community of last year's service. And we just took it to a whole new level. And I think it's so interesting, but part of it is because we're virtual, it allowed us to sort of think outside the box in terms of doing, having participants, not just from our community, but from really around the country. It was so great. Everybody worked really hard to pull it together. The songs were beautiful. The readings were beautiful. It was powerful. And we got an email from one of the members of our committee and a Temple member who I wrote this down because I loved how she described it. She said it was wonderful, heartwarming, inclusive, real, and just what we needed at these times. So I tend to think that's right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for your role in helping to create that beautiful service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful Devorah Torah and Devorah Torah.
Thank you.
And all the efforts, yes.
Anything else you want us to know?
Nothing comes to the top of my head, but again, reach out if you have any interest in helping Temple become the most welcoming community it can be. And this is a little bit off topic for the task force, but I'm excited to see what else Temple has in store in terms of the radical project of empathy. Rabbi Michelson hit on that as well, obviously, in terms of recognizing racial injustice and the systematic racism in our country in particular. And, it's a little outside the purview, but of this particular task force. But I hope there will be some thought given to that coming down the road in Temple. And if not, I'll try and make my bones about it and be heard about that.
And I know others will join you. We all want to make this congregation, this community, the best it can be and the most warm and welcoming and comfortable place for us all. So
Amen.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Max, for sharing these thoughts. If you are interested in being part of the task force, let Max know and we'll sign you up. So
absolutely. Thanks all. And thank you, Rabbi Jessica. This was very nice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.